In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the 2006 Harley-Davidson Night Rod VRod that I've owned for the last 5 years. It's going to be a bit of a super quick rush review because my buyer is, well, he was supposed to be coming in 2 days and he called me to tell me he's coming right now. So let's crank this out. I'm going to try and give you everything you need to know before you buy a 2006 or any of that first generation, basically 2000, 2006 Harley-Davidson VRod. Let's get into it. First, let's start with what this motorcycle is and isn't. This is not a beginner-friendly motorcycle. I had somebody who wanted this for his first bike. I just outright refused to sell it to him. I didn't want that on my conscience. This is Harley's first liquid-cooled machine. They gave it all the performance they absolutely could. They even recruited Porsche engineers to help them with the project. There's actually a really cool documentary that I think the Discovery Channel did.
For over 6 years, it was one of the best-kept secrets in motorcycling. A Harley that was unlike anything Harley had ever built.
I'll link to it. You can check it out, all about the making, the top secret making of this bike. It's pretty cool. The VRod is claimed at making 128 horsepower and over 70 foot-pounds of torque. The torque is pretty accurate. The horsepower, when I had this on a dyno, it was still over 100. It definitely wasn't 120.
Their first step was to put a VR1000 racing engine into the frame of a traditional Harley.
Technically, the 2007 and up models make about 5 horsepower more, and they have the bigger 1250cc motor. First gen, you're only going to have 1130cc motor. But to be honest, the 2007 up, that later generation of VRods, they are much bigger, much heavier. So when you look at actual power to weight ratio, the bigger motor doesn't actually really make them any faster.
Everybody had their own concept on what this thing was going to be, but we knew what the essence of this motorcycle was going to be. You know, bare bones, powerful, custom.
The VRod is a thoroughbred muscle cruiser. You can hit 100 kilometers an hour or 60 miles per hour in first gear on this thing. This motorcycle makes power at just about any RPMs in any gear, and it'll let you know that it makes power from the second you let go of the clutch. She wants to go. Speaking of the clutch, a slipper clutch is available if you can still find one, and it makes the otherwise typical heavy Harley clutch pull a lot more comfortable. Across the front, we'll find a simple dash with odometer, trip meters, remaining range on the gas tank, a clock, tach, and gas gauge. The gas gauge on these models very often stop working. There are special tools you can buy online or 3D print yourself to open up the gas tank, take out the fuel sensor, clean it up, put it back in. It'll work perfect all over again. But before you do that, you might just want to hit it with some carb cleaner or any kind of fuel cleaning fluid treatment in the gas tank first.
I wanted this vehicle to have that type of presence where you'd walk up to it and you say, that's a new Harley-Davidson. Wow. In front of the dash, the motorcycle usually comes with a standard Harley-Davidson 5 3/4 inch, at least on the Night Rod model. The headlight has a lame H4 bulb. I strongly recommend upgrading to the Daymaker style headlight that you see on my bike. I have a video I put out years ago showing you how to do this, including what OEM and also aftermarket parts you need to use together for a clean installation with no having to cut up your factory harness. The difference is amazing. It's an awesome, awesome upgrade, and aesthetically, I personally like this look.
Wow, that is really bright.
A lot better than the original wannabe Sons of Anarchy style.
Drag racing motorcycles have a certain feel to them that's very low and long, aggressive, minimal. So then that starts to create a sense of direction.
Moving down the front end, suspension is non-adjustable but adequate. Personally, progressive suspension would be nice to have, but that can be said for pretty much any Harley-Davidson out there. That brings us down to the brakes. Dual disc brakes up front go with the muscle cruiser performance of this motorcycle. I think most VRods, but maybe not all of them, will come equipped with Brembos. Part of the reason why I upgraded from a Suzuki Boulevard M50 to the VRod was for the improved braking, and I wasn't disappointed. I wouldn't say this was super sport level of braking, but for a cruiser, it is more than adequate, and it's not something I have heavy complaints about. There are some other issues I will complain about, but we'll get to those later.
To get the best of both worlds, they offset the angle between the steering head and the front fork.
That gave us the long, low, raked-out front end look of the dragster custom motorcycle and still gave us the handling characteristics we need to be able to live with it every day.
The front tire is a 120/70 ZR19, which isn't too hard to find tires for. I've been running Avon Cobras and I actually enjoy them. They haven't let me down in cooler weather or even wetter weather. The problem with the tires and a lot of the issues with the bike are not actually at the front end of the bike, but in the rear. So we'll talk about that in just a sec. Let's talk about the rims while we're over here, because that's absolutely something that you should know about. Rims are a big debate in the VRod communities. The original V-rods came with solid rims, which caused those original V-rods to be very susceptible to crosswinds. Obviously, the Night Rod has these nice spoked rims. I like them. You don't get that same issue as the other V-rods do have. I would recommend looking for ones like this.
The prototype brought them face to face with other issues. To make room for the engine's two large throttle valves, the fuel tank had to move. The challenge for engineering was, if the fuel tank couldn't go where it usually went, then where do you put it?
Between these two side covers is where you'll find the battery. Harley-Davidson does a lot of things right with the V-Rod. The fenders and covers are typically made from aluminum rather than steel to keep the weight down and premium finish up. They do intelligent stuff that just makes sense, like having the gas tank weight down low, airbox up top. But this battery placement is just unfortunate. It's a pain in the butt to access. It puts a heavy big block up higher right here on your bike. I didn't have to replace the battery on the V-Rod for the 5 years I have it because I always use my pigtail to take care of it. But if I did have to replace the battery on this bike, I would probably go with a lightweight lithium battery. It's going to feel a lot better not having that extra 5 or 10 pounds of weight way up high. On that note, unrelated, I have a video coming up on lithium batteries for motorcycles and what the benefits are and whether or not it's actually worth it to upgrade and for who it might be worth it and for who it might not. Hit subscribe if you want to see that video. It's coming out probably in 2 weeks.
They recommended that we do the sheet metal, fenders and airbox cover out of wrought aluminum.
Moving further back under, well, typically from factory this would be aluminum. This part here is actually aftermarket. Usually this would be aluminum, which means a couple things. One, Harley-Davidson is trying to keep the weight down versus having a steel airbox cover. I say airbox cover because they were smart to put lightweight stuff like empty air in here and heavy stuff like gasoline down low. We'll get to that later. The other thing this means is if you have a magnetic tank bag, it will not stick to the aluminum cover, or in this case, the fiberglass one. The V-Rod is not necessarily the most utilitarian motorcycle, and I know it's not made to be that. It's made to be more like a hot rod of motorcycles, but it's just good for you guys to be aware of that. For the seat, Harley-Davidson made lots of options with different finishes. Personally, I think this perforated leather kind of look, it just exudes class and quality finish. I also had the fatter touring seat, another factory option for this motorcycle made by Harley, but I found it just didn't pair well. It stuck out too much, and it didn't really work with the mid controls on this bike. The factory touring seat felt a lot better on V-Rods with forward controls, but that's not what you get on this Night Rod. On the Night Rod, it just feels awkward. This seat, much better. The rear fender is also aluminum because Harley wasn't cutting corners on finish. It's bottomed out by what V-Rod owners call the dog's ass. This expression never made much sense to me, but you will see it referenced among V-Rod owners a lot, and I have not seen anyone outside of V-Rod owners call this tailpiece that, so now you know.
But the biggest challenge that faced styling and engineering was just beginning: the radiator. The engineers suggested making the radiator bigger and adding scoops to pull in air from either side of the front wheel.
Back to the front, you'll find these ram air scoop looking things that help bring air to the rad while simultaneously protecting it from any debris that could cause damage from the front tire. I think personally it's a smart design, and it makes sense that they tried to really decorate the rad, given that this was Harley's first liquid-cooled motorcycle. I think they did a good job. I like how this all flows. Now, let's talk about the motor. It came in different colors, but personally, nothing says badass like matte black with just subtle but very nice chrome little finish to it, topped by chrome headers there. I think this motor looks great. I could look at it all day long. No push rods, but that's okay.
Harley turned to one of the world's great engine makers, Porsche.
We gained the additional expertise to supplement our own. So there are more smart people looking at how to make the best product possible.
I think also the fact that it has all the power to back up its bad mofo looks is a cherry on top. My Night Rod right now has like 8 months of dust on it. I didn't insure it this year as I figured I'd be selling it, so I'm kind of embarrassed to say she's in real need of a wash, but I can promise you, even after 16 years, this chrome still comes out banging after a good cleaning. And right here is where the key goes. And personally, the placement of this key, it sucks. It's awkward to reach under your leg, behind your knee to fiddle with the key placement. V-Rod owners will soon learn that the correct order of operations is you put the key in, then you sit on the bike, you go for your ride, then you get off the bike, then you take the key out. If you try and do it any other way, sooner or later, you're going to drop your key right in between the hot exhaust pipes and have to burn your fingers to get it out. It's a bad time. Hopefully I've just saved you toasty fingers. You're welcome. Hit that like button if I did.
We realized that we could put the fuel under the seat.
This created a new problem. With a big engine and a low frame, There wasn't much room left for a gas tank.
The cutout for the key also takes away from an already really small fuel capacity. I'll put on the screen what it is, which combined with the fact that this bike guzzles, especially after a good tune to get it really running properly, it means that you are not getting more than an hour away from home before you're going to start thinking about where the next gas station is.
You can create a bike that looks awesome, but if you're only going to be able to run 50 miles on a tank, nobody's going to buy it.
To give you some comparisons, I'll put some data on the screen in text I don't have time to look at right now, but what I can tell you for sure is this bike I average around 8.8 liters per 100 kilometers versus on my BMW I average 4.4 liters per 100 kilometers. In other words, I get double the mileage on my BMW, and to put the cherry on top, my BMW will take regular, my VRod only takes premium. So that's what we're dealing with here. Not the most utilitarian bike. It's meant to be a fun, hot rod kind of style motorcycle. It's not meant for the long riding days without stopping. Now, I gotta say, I absolutely love my V-Rod, especially up until where the key goes. And I have a few complaints kind of past that, so let's talk about those. After the tank, we have this rear shock, which for me as a solo rider was totally adequate because especially when I bought this bike, I was only like 155 pounds. I was doing just fine. The problem is, if you put a passenger on the back seat, and you're on anything other than perfectly paved roads, you will start bottoming out like crazy on this thing. It's not a good time. It's definitely worth around the 260 to replace these for some progressive suspension shocks. I think if you're going to do a lot of two-up riding, it's a strong recommendation. You'll appreciate the difference it makes. Next thing to talk about is the rear tire. It is a 180/55 ZR18. Again, I got the Avon Cobras and I've enjoyed them. I really like them. I even bought a brand new pair, not because I didn't think there was better stuff out there. I'm sure somebody's going to say that there's a better tire. I really enjoyed them the first time, and they were on sale when I was looking at buying some new ones, so I got them again. The problem is with these tires, it's not so much the Cobras or a different brand, it's the 18-inch wheel. There is not a lot made in an 18-inch wheel size. To give you guys a perfect example, Michelin Tires reached out to me when they launched the new Scorcher lineup. They wanted to give me a brand new free set of tires. All I would have to do is pay for installation myself, obviously, and then ride around, test them, and share with you guys what I thought of them. And I couldn't take that deal with Michelin for a free brand new set of tires because they didn't have anything in my size. That was a huge disappointment for me to have that kind of opportunity and not be able to take it. And I think it speaks volumes to just how little the selection is when you have an 18-inch rear tire. So there are a good handful of options out there for you. Just be mindful you might not have as much selection as you would on different size cruisers.
Porsche's engineering services facility in Weissach, Germany is renowned for its performance engine designs. In late 1996, a team from Harley took up residence there to begin collaborating on the P4.
Back in the middle of this bike, let's talk about transmission. The V-Rod has a 5-speed tranny, and while it makes gobs of power, like enough to do 145 miles per hour or about 230 kilometers per hour, you might still find yourself looking for a 6th gear when you're looking for a traditional cruiser's low RPMs for an overdrive. That might be nice to have on longer rides. This bike doesn't have that. Other than that, though, shifting gears are a hybrid of the usual clunkiness you would expect from a Harley-Davidson, as well as decent smoothness that you'd expect from a more refined machine. And personally, I like a bit of positive feedback when I'm switching gears. I don't mind the clunk into first gear. I kind of like it, actually. Obviously, there is no gear indicator because this is not a motorcycle made for beginners. Most of your riding will be done around 25 to 5,500 RPMs, but whatever gear and RPM you find yourself in, if you twist the throttle, the V-Rod will unleash enough torque to make you smile every time. Getting towards the end of this review, we have mid-controls. On other V-Rod models, you'll find forward controls, but the Night Rod and the Street Rod get mid-controls because they're the fast ones. Can these mid-controls feel a bit awkward at first? Absolutely. You may initially think, what have I done and should I change it? Don't. The best advice I ever got was do nothing, ride it for a week. I did that, and sure enough, by the end of the first week, I was used to the mid-controls, and I liked them. You'll definitely appreciate the mid-controls when you want to do some spirited riding in the twisties, but when you want to just chill out, it also comes with these front controls, not really controls, front foot pegs for just stretching out and chilling out.
The problem was that to meet noise regulations, it would have to be large enough to hold 12 liters of air, the biggest exhaust ever on a Harley.
Lastly, we have the exhaust. The Night Rod doesn't have the traditional Harley-Davidson sound, and why should it? There's no push rods, the bike's liquid cooled. We're comparing 60-degree V-twins with 45-degree V-twins. The V-Rod's motor is nothing like what Harley-Davidson was making at the time, so as a result, the V-Rod sounds nothing like a traditional Harley-Davidson. However, you can get a variety of slip-ons for the motorcycle, and when paired with a K&N air filter and a fuel processor to adjust your air-fuel ratio, it'll let you make a lot more power and help the motorcycle to run properly because the V-Rod comes far too lean from factory.
All right, so obviously the buyer has come, my V-Rod is gone, but I still need to talk to you guys about some very important things, including handling, reliability, whether or not I would buy one again, and yes, even sexual harassment. The buyer asked me, how does a VRod handle? And for what it is, it handles fine. For a big-ass cruiser that weighs well over 600 pounds, it handles fine for that long wheelbase. But it's not a super sport. So if you're looking for that high precision, you're not going to get it with this kind of wheelbase, even with the mid-controls, even with the 180 tire instead of the 240. That's not the kind of bike it is. But there's also an element of handling that doesn't involve the tight precision, which is just everyday kind of use. And that's where I gotta admit that being a guy who lives in Toronto, which is Canada's most densely populated, biggest city, sometimes it felt like I was wrangling a whole lot of bikes. Sometimes it was a lot of clutch in, clutch out, just to try and hold the reins on all of those horses that the minute you let the clutch out, really just want to lunge forward. So if you're in that kind of stop and go everyday commuting with this bike, it can be a lot. If this is something you're going to mostly joyride, not take to work during the 9 to 5 rush hour, then you will have a good time.
To pass, the engines had to endure an obstacle course of wide open throttle and mountain climbing torque. The goal was 500 hours, nearly 21 days non-stop.
Now, where reliability is concerned, I did have the bike fail me once in 5 years, and it's kind of funny because all of the old school Harley guys who never liked the V-Rod always said, oh, liquid cooling just makes things too complicated, so much more likely to have stuff break. And I was like, that's complete BS. We've been doing liquid cooled vehicles for like 100 years. I'm sure it's fine. Well, the thermostat on my V-Rod failed. Bike started overheating, shut down. I pulled over before I did any damage, luckily. And yeah, so that was... It was good that it had that fail-safe in there, bad that it failed in the first place, but everything was okay. Besides that thermostat, 5 years, no issues. Not bad. Other than that, though, this motorcycle has been a complete pleasure to own, and yeah, I don't regret anything from the reliability standpoint. Speaking of pleasures, this bike did get me an interesting amount of sexual harassment from people in my workplace, mostly women in their late 40s, early 50s. Yeah, she looked really good. We would have hit it off for sure. And then there was a senior director in the company too, and I'm like, thanks. So yeah, it'll get you attention. Whether or not it's wanted attention is another story, but it's fun like that.
Cranking out 115 horsepower and revving at over 9,000 RPMs. With a top speed of over 140 miles per hour, it would be Harley's fastest, most powerful engine ever.
And I guess the last question is, would I buy this motorcycle again? And the answer is yes, in a heartbeat. I'm not keeping track on what the score is for pros and cons or what side they're on, but basically I can tell you the pros far outweigh in quality the cons. This is an awesome, very fun, very powerful, very charismatic motorcycle. It does feel rich and premium, aside from the suspension, which feels not great. It's a good machine. I would definitely buy one again. I will probably buy one again. Maybe even by the time you're watching this video, if you're watching it somewhere long after I posted it, I might have already bought one again. My only concern would be how well maintained it was by a previous owner or owners. And also, we have to realize that these bikes are getting anywhere from 5 to like 15, 20 years old. Which sort of begs the question of how much longer will we be able to find parts like that thermostat or whatever if things are to fail. That's something to keep in mind anytime you're buying a used bike. But I do have to say that for the V-Rod specifically, there are a few really good resources out there which are super helpful. There's 1130cc.com, which is an online V-Rod forum. Awesome minds on there. I can't speak enough to how helpful those guys are, how knowledgeable they are, and just how much of a resource that website is using the search function there. Facebook groups can also be super helpful. There's also a lot of them out there, so I won't name the individual ones. Their names are all kind of pretty similar. And Fitzgerald Motorsports. These guys do everything from like cams and exhausts and all kinds of stuff. If you want to get really crazy with what your V-Rod can do, check them out. They have all kinds of stuff. They're super knowledgeable about the V-Rods. So yeah, there are resources out there, even though the bike is a little bit old. Look into them. You will find some cool stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed my review. I know it's been probably my longest video I've ever made, but I want to do one last big send-off where I just put as much information as I thought was relevant into one video to try and give it to sort of future people coming into the community down the road. I enjoyed this bike. I think you will as well. Make sure it was well looked after by the previous owner. Ride the hell out of it, maintain the hell out of it, and you'll have an awesome machine. If you want to see more videos by me, please hit the subscribe button. And if you just like this video, do me a solid. Just hit the like button. Never see me again, but at least you're helping me out. I would appreciate you guys' support. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the end. Really cool of you. Always means a lot to me. And yeah, as always, ride safe, but have fun. I miss my V-Rod. Peace. What up guys, Adrian from U Motorcycle. Everybody who knows me knows that I love my Harley-Davidson V-Rod. To me, the V-Rod is the best bike Harley ever made. What up guys, Adrian from U Motorcycle. Today we're going to be working on my favorite bike ever, the greatest motorcycle Harley-Davidson has ever produced. I'm talking about the V-Rod. And I'm going to tell y'all one more time, with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest motorcycle Harley-Davidson has ever made. Thanks for watching.